This is a virtual reading of Conspirators, To Each His Own Agenda by Matt Gupta.
Chapter 46. The Harbour City. There was silence for a long moment, and then the governor laughed, sending his jewels quivering and his flabby skin shaking throughout his body. And why would I accept such an offer? Because it's your only chance for survival, Barani smiled. Not that we care, but no more of your men need die. You sound supremely confident in your abilities, the governor chuckled, for a woman who has no place in an army. Your offer is as pathetic as it is stupid. Prepare yourselves, traitors. Ignatius will see you fall. I am his most trusted ally, and I will see you hang for this. He turned and left. The citadel guards nodded at Alistair and then followed. Their captain even saluted to him with a slight jerk of his head. The governor's mercenary captain stood still for a moment. He was slender, but well built, and he held his sword in its scabbard in his left hand, instead of on his belt, though all they could see of his face was his black, well-trimmed beard past his helmet. They could see he bore them nothing but goodwill. After this moment of admiration, he bowed to Alistair and his generals, and then turned to follow his lord. When they were back within the safety of the walls, the mercenary turned to his lord. You shouldn't have done that. If you fight, you will lose. I will not trust my city to the likes of you and your men. You are convenient to have in an army, but do not delude yourself into thinking that you can command any respect here. Now prepare for battle, and if the wall falls, I will have your head. The captain gave him an irritated look and rolled his eyes. He let out a long sigh. No, he said finally. He smirked and turned to his men manning the gatehouse. Men of iron, he shouted. His company of mercenaries turned away from their post to see him speak. It's time to find us a new employer. The men atop the wall let out a single roar-like cheer and abandoned their post to meet the captain. How dare you, the governor spluttered. Arrest them. The citadel guards closed forward, but their grip on their weapons was half-hearted at best. The captain simply pulled on the hilt of his dirk, just enough to show the glint of silvery metal. Even your longswords will do you no good here, friends, the captain threatened cheerfully. The citadel captain knew it, nodded and stood down. I could use good men, he offered them. Join us? The citadel captain shook his head, his voice full and deep. We have a reputation to hold to. Unlike yourself, we cannot choose our clientele. Very well, open the gate, he shouted to one of his men. Several of them did so. I bid you farewell, he saluted to the governor. You will not see the next day, the governor bellowed at them. I pray we both will, governor. Only I shall see the light, and you will only see the gallows. He gave the same flourishing bow he had given to Alistair as the gates opened with a great straining of oak. My king, Pillimore called, as he and Alistair moved back from the front of the army and took up positions on the right, the point of command. Alistair did not need to see what Pillimore was pointing out. He knew it already. My Lord Bane. Bane was already standing straight, but he straightened up even more at Alistair's command. See our new guest to the rear lines of the army. We will not ask honest men to spill their brother's blood this day. Have them surrender their arms. Those who refuse, cut off their arms. If they curse you for doing so, cut out their tongues. If they still resist you, give them a year's wages for being able to defy you with no tongue and arms. Lord Bane nodded, and he and several knights rode to meet the mercenary company of the Iron Men. Once they were clear, Alistair nodded to Pillimore. Pillimore smirked through his huge beard, spat into each hand, and then rubbed his chest. It was evidently some kind of pre-battle ritual that he engaged in. But before Alistair could think more on the matter, Pillimore roared, "Formation! Let's take it down." Pillimore's men, the huge vanguard of Scots, all raised their halberds, pikes, swords and pavises into an attack pose. They let out a roar of victory and then rushed at the wall. The men at the front were manning the pavises, huge shields that could cover the whole body and more, only these were bigger than normal to allow for the massive size of the men holding them. The siege ladders were brought up behind them. The men on the walls all cried out words of terror as they saw their enemy approach, and only a few arrows were released. The kingdom military did not favour archery, unlike other armies, so arrows would be scarce at the best of times. But even here they were negligible in their amount. The pylon volleys were much more impressive. The entire 3 miles of wall was suddenly a mass of wood and steel, although it was stunted in many areas, where the lines had been depleted by the mercenary abandonment. "Ready the ram," Alistair called to Baranis. "Bring that gate down." Baranis nodded and signalled to Vitalian. "Form up the wall," she shouted as she rode away. Now it was Alistair, his knight commander, his Athenian generals, and Lord Bane's son, who was holding the banner. Alistair only knew the man by reputation. He was very much the heir apparent for House Arlcliffe and had taken part in a number of campaigns, but he had accomplished little to distinguish himself from any other man of import. "Tell me," Alistair said to him, "have you ever been part of a siege before, sir?" 14, sire." Sir Bane bowed his head. "They are usually much slower than this." Alistair continued, ignoring the man's answer. "At least we get to take the walls on the first day." "Yes, sir." "My last siege lasted 3 seasons. We barely had enough men to storm the keep." "What happened?" "Infighting, sire." Sir Bane admitted without restraint. "Mostly over the whores and prisoners that we had procured in the followers' camp. Many more were lost to flux, but our commander had the wisdom to call a desperate end to the siege and attack. If he had not, I fear we would have been lost." Alistair nodded and smiled. It wouldn't happen here. They would take this city, leave it in the hands of the worthy, and then march on the capital. Nothing would stop his army. He would take this jewel from Ignatius in a day, and history would remember this battle as the most daring, fast, and complete sieges in all the world, a token to his rule. He would be disappointed. The city was built as a 3-walled fortress, a much smaller version of the capital. The first 2 walls fell within a few days each, but the 3rd wall halted all progress, so that nearly a week later they had not broken it. Though the full 3 legions of the city's defence had been destroyed or surrendered in the capture of these 2 walls, the final wall was manned with the remaining 4. Alistair had set up his command in the ruins of the fortifications, his tent set at the far back of the camp. He was holding a war council with his generals. "We should have been well on the way to the capital by now," Alistair complained. "Falthor will have begun the siege of the capital this morning. If we cannot reach the capital soon—" "Falthor is no fool," Pillimore reassured him. "I know the men who stand with him. Some may be brash and reckless, but they know what battles are to be won and which are not. Fear not for your friend, my prince." Alistair looked torn in his feelings. "Thank you for your reassurances, my friend, but do not interrupt me again." Pillimore looked confused for a moment, then bowed and apologized. Baranis spoke up. We were fools to think we could take this city in a single battle. They were hardly going to roll over and die for us, regardless of our virtue and prowess. She speaks the truth, Pillimore agreed. No matter how fearsome and brilliant we are, we were ill prepared for this battle. We have no siege equipment and no means to overcome their walls. And yet we are making great progress, Baranis put in. Every day we inflict numerous casualties on the defenders. Their morale will break soon. But their walls will remain, Alistair said. Our supplies are running low, and soon we will not be able to hold the siege against the capital. We must take this city, and we need to do it soon. We all know the pressures of war, my prince, Pillimore reassured. But the pressures of war will not tear down those walls. Then we must abandon this siege and begin the march on the capital, Bane said, speaking resolutely from the side of the table. Pillimore made no attempt to hide his displeasure at this. No, we cannot. I promised the governor I would have his head. That is my decision to make, Pillimore. Baranis argued the point as well. There are several strategic reasons for not abandoning our position here. We cannot maintain an effective siege with an enemy free to attack our rear. 20,000 men will destroy us if they march forth and attack the capital. Then let us split our forces and maintain this siege until the capital is won, Bane offered. No. Even Alistair could see the flaw in this idea. We suffer casualties as much as they do. If we leave even a token force behind, the siege will break them. We must have victory here, or we will be lost. Indeed, Baranis put in. The first princes of Seaward won the first war against the Orcs with not one army, but all three. We underestimated the city once. Let's not do the same twice. What are our options then? Pillimore demanded. We need a way to breach their walls. The mercenary companies have told us nothing we don't already know. They have food and supplies to withstand the siege in ways that we can't. So we can't starve them out. Any artillery we make cannot hit the walls that deep into the city, even though they have fired all day and night. We could ask them nicely to surrender, Alistair joked. The tent chorused its laughter. There is one way, Baranis fidgeted. Her hesitancy did not inspire confidence in Alistair, but he let her talk with a wave of his hand. We could burn the parts of the city we control. We cover all exits to the city and only allow people out if they surrender. The flames will spread. There was silence. That could work. Pillimore nodded. The army is nothing without the governor ordering them to fight. We burn the city, or they throw him over the walls. Alistair nodded. I'm of a mind to simply burn it to the ground anyway. It's caused nothing but trouble. We begin first thing tomorrow. I trust you can get everything ready. Of course, Pillimore growled. I do love a good roast. I look forward to eating the governor. There was a tense silence. Or not, Pillimore shrugged. Depends on my mood. The next day, the army stood in formation outside the city walls. Alistair and his generals went up onto the second wall, the better to look at the defenders on top of the third. Many had tried firing arrows at them, but Baranis had brought her veterans of the shield wall, and they were doing a very good job of deflecting all of the missiles being sent their way. Alistair stood in the middle, with a slight opening to see outwards and address his enemy. Men of the harbour city, you have fought gallantly. He spoke into a brass horn that magnified his voice, so echoed around the streets and off of the walls, so everyone could hear him. Against all odds, you have survived and held out much longer than any of us expected. But my respect for you can only go so far. It is over now. Surrender, or we will burn the city to the ground, with all of you in it. There was a great uproar from the city, mostly taunts and jeers, but among the shouts were screams of terror. Listen to them, Pillimore smiled. Let us see how brave they are when they're choking on their own throats. Let us hope it does not come to that. They doubt our resolve, Baranis observed. We need to show them we are serious in this. Agreed, Pillimore nodded. Bring up the flames, he shouted to his men behind him. My men will be guarding the gates, Alistair instructed. Open the gates with arms and you will be decimated. Open the gates to surrender and you will be spared and allowed to leave. Stay within your walls and you will die. He turned to face his archers. Fire at will. The archers along the wall were waiting for the orders. The arrows were set alight and fired upwards in a huge volley. The sky was blackened with smoke trails, but the arrows didn't hit the men on the inner wall. They flew over them and thudded into the ground behind the wall. The city didn't ignite, however. It was made of stone, as all the major cities of the kingdom were. The men on the wall laughed out loud at the uselessness of the attack. Pillimore's men took up position on the walls as well. Pillimore raised his hand, and the men deployed. 2 men were holding onto rubber ropes that would normally be used to hold a ship together in troubled waters. The 3rd man of each group began pulling on a sling. The wall was wide enough to house a trebuchet, so they had plenty of room. When the rubber was ready to break, then they released. In each sling was a clay pot filled with pitch and tar. The pots flew upwards, the lids flying off and sending the pitch all over the walls and finally splashing down into the fire arrows. The effect, though Alistair and his army couldn't see it, was instantaneous. The pitch ignited and the flames flew up the walls like a twisted, hateful snake. The shield wall is ready, Baranis confirmed. We're preparing outside the gate. Alistair nodded. He turned to Pillimore. Take over here. Don't let up until I give the order. Gladly. Alistair moved with the shield wall defending him. The gates between the middle and inner walls was a huge corridor with the gates on either side. It was one of the widest parts of the city. It was large enough to allow 4 companies of soldiers to maintain block formations with a great deal of space for reinforcements to deploy. The bombardment continued for hours and the flames were spreading. Ready yourselves, Baranis shouted in her Germanic tongue to keep the soldiers motivated. These men will be desperate and will fight to the last. They will show no mercy. Neither will we. The gates began to groan open, as the locks on the stone opening were removed and the heavy mechanisms were activated. Shield wall, Baranis shouted. The shields of all of the men swung into motion. The wall was solid. The gate opened to its full capacity before there was any sign of movement. Then the swish of a cloak and 5 men arrived. 4 of them were Citadel guardsmen and the governor. The Citadel guardsmen were wrestling the governor into the doorway. Unhand me, you motherless dogs, the governor was shouting. I will have your heads for this. The Citadel guardsman didn't speak, but simply threw him to the floor. Alistair inclined his head in curiosity and stepped forward through the shield walls. The men and women turned to let him through. As soon as he passed them, they slipped back into formation. It was clearly a maneuver they had done before. He stepped forward until he was clear, but only a single pace ahead of the formation. What is the meaning of this? He demanded to the Citadel captain. Just keeping up appearances, the Citadel captain said. He removed his helmet. Cameron, Alistair shouted. Your Majesty, Cameron smiled. Please accept this as a token of our loyalty. Alistair looked down at the governor. I accept, he nodded, with a raised eyebrow. The fires are spreading too quickly. Cameron immediately abandoned his relaxed nature. Will you let the people out? Will the city surrender? This pile of crap was the only thing that kept them fighting. He'd locked himself in the citadel and ordered his remaining mercenaries to slaughter all those not wanting to fight. We finally broke through after a mass revolt. The city has been in rebellion for days. The mercenaries will still fight though, but we need to deal with the flames before they spread. Barani stepped forward. This could be a trap. I know him, Alistair said. We can trust him. The city is a jewel. If we can save it, we will. Signal Pillimore to stop the bombardment. We place our flag at the top of the city, and then we deal with the flames. You get the people out, he instructed to Baranis and Cameron. Keep them contained until we can deal with them. What about him? Cameron pointed, looking at the governor on the ground. My legionary commander has a thing or two he would like to do to him. I would hate to deprive him. Let's get to work.